Hello, Internet! I'm Elliot the Purple-Haired Doofus, and welcome back to American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Today we're covering chapters 6 and 7, so I hope you've read up to that point because I do not want to ruin anything for you. Our section today begins with Shadow, Zernobog, Mr. Wednesday, and Mr. Nancy riding the carousel and being transported somewhere else. The lights flicker, carousel creatures start moving, and the carousel creatures start coming alive. And it's at this point that Shadow sees these older men that he was building a rapport with as what they truly are, which is gods. Now, I missed what Zernobog was, so if you know what Zernobog was and you know that it was told in this chapter, please let me know because I missed that. But Mr. Nancy is actually a god named Anansi, who is the god of spiders. Mr. Wednesday actually reveals himself to be Odin, the god of thunder. That's awesome. As they are riding along, Anansi explains to Shadow that they are actually inside Odin's head right now. Everyone is inside Odin's head. Because it's not just these three older gentlemen that Shadow is with. He is surrounded by gods, as it's this big kind of congregation of them. Kind of like a giant meeting of gods. Anansi goes to the stage, or he goes to the front of the crowd and he starts kind of warming them up. And he tells the tale of a man who steals a tiger's testicles. I won't give the entire thing away because it's very, very entertaining. I'm just letting you know, if you haven't read that bit, you really, really should. But basically, it's just Anansi telling the story to the crowd to warm them up before Odin comes up to give his speech. Odin goes up and he starts talking about how Americans don't really believe in them anymore. Americans now believe in money, television, and computer games, and how the people that are there at the conference need to start battling against the money, the computer games, the television, and all this stuff. Basically, he's trying to start a war with the things that Americans believe in now. The crowd is kind of split 50-50 on whether or not they should go to war, and Odin is done talking, so he, Anansi, and Zernobog get back on their creatures and head back out of Odin's mind. They leave the roadside attraction and head to the car where Shadow is to drive these older gods to a restaurant to eat. They meet a woman named Mama G, and Mama G hasn't revealed herself yet to us, but she asks Shadow if he agrees with what Odin just said, and Odin is trying to stay impartial. He's like, I'm just here for the ride, and they eventually get to the restaurant. The gods walk ahead while Shadow is locking up the car, and as he's walking towards the restaurant, he is abducted by two men. These two men grab him up and they toss him in a empty white room. And he's there for hours and hours and hours, and they took his wallet, his phone. They took pretty much everything that he had, except for a couple coins. And so to pass the time, he practices coin tricks. The two men come in and they start interrogating him on how he knows Mr. Wednesday, how he knows Odin. Of course, Shadow, being loyal to Mr. Wednesday / Odin, doesn't tell them anything, but he asks them what their names are, and one of the guys says, I'm Mr. Wood, and this is my partner, Mr. Stone. You won't tell us anything now, but eventually you will tell us something. And those two men leave, and they leave him there for the night. And late at night, Shadow is awoken by screams. The cell door that he's in is open, and on the other side is his dead wife, Laura, covered in the blood of Stone and Wood. Turns out Laura had infiltrated the place and killed everyone to release Shadow, and now he can escape, and they are walking through the woods, and he finally asks the question that Odin had told him to ask the dead in the first place, which was, what does she want? And Laura says, I just really, really want to live again. It's weird walking around now without blood pumping through me. You didn't think that you wouldn't notice, but you do. One interesting thing in this aspect that I would really like to point out is she has a coin that Shadow had tossed into the grave, and she has it hanging around her neck right now, which further solidifies my theory that maybe it was the coin that brought her back to life in the first place. Shadow says, I don't know how to do that, and Laura says, you do. You just need to find out what it is exactly, and I know that you will. And she is off, leaving Shadow in the woods alone. She also warns him not to use his credit cards because the men that were after him will find him as soon as he uses his credit cards. So it's a good thing that he has the $1,000 cash that he got from Odin. He's walking through the woods though, and he comes across a giant black bird the size of a dog. And the bird starts talking to him. It's strange. It's weird. It's creepy as heck. And the bird says, "Oh, Shadow, Odin is looking for you. Go to Cairo." This is one part where hearing it audibly is not going to translate as well as reading it on the page. Cairo isn't spelled C-A-I-R-O, it's spelled K-A-Y-R-O. And the bird says, once you get to Cairo, you need to meet the jackal. And Shadow says, "I don't know what that means." The bird says, "Trust me, you will." And he guides him a little bit farther in through the woods until he can find a street or civilization. Shadow gets to a gas station where he talks to the gas attendant who has a cousin who is a used car salesman. Shadow buys a very cheap, almost broken car from the used car salesman so that he can drive the rest of the way to Cairo, which he finds out by talking to the gas attendant is actually a part of Louisiana. There's an area of Louisiana known as Egypt that has Cairo in it, and that is where he is supposed to go. As he is driving down the road, he pulls off to go to sleep. When he wakes up, he is woken by a woman who is asking him for a ride farther down the road. He agrees. They have this conversation where it's like, are you a murderer, are you a killer, are you an escaped convict? And Shadow has to think about exactly how to answer that question because he was in jail and he did escape from someone, but he never killed anyone. The hitchhiker tells him the story about a group of Vikings that are trying to trick the gods into giving them what they want without sacrificing their friend by loosely tying intestines around his neck and using poles instead of spears to poke him in the ribs to pretend like they are piercing his ribs so that they can get what they want. According to her story, the god Odin found out about this and instantly transformed their poles into spears and instantly transformed the intestines into thick rope that tightened around his neck and pulled him up, killing him. Kinda leading you into the idea that maybe Odin's not all good. We also find out that the hitchhiker is part Indian. I'm not quite sure if that's going to come into effect later, but it was important for them enough to have a whole page on the hitchhiker's lineage. Shadow drops the Indian woman off. He goes to a hotel. During the late night, he's flipping through channels watching reruns of old 50s and 60s television shows when he comes across I Love Lucy. And Lucy starts talking to him through the TV. It is creepy. So creepy. And Lucy starts trying to give him the same pitch that Odin did. And I'm just now thinking that maybe this is the gods trying to compete to add a new god onto their side. So maybe Shadow is a god and these new gods, which Lucy is representative of media and Odin is representative of the old gods, are trying to snatch up Shadow for their own sides. This, of course, freaks Shadow out, and he passes out, and he eventually gets to Cairo, however you want to say it. He eventually gets there, he meets up with Jackal, and Jackal is a huge dog, and his owner is named Ibis. That's where the chapter ends, but not before. There's a short little story about a man in New York. This man is very downtrodden. This man is very frustrated with his work because he works for his son-in-law and he is pretty much a office-to-office salesman trying to sell off garbage to no one. And he gets into a taxi cab where he meets this very, very tired driver that's been up for almost 40 hours driving. They're talking about him selling garbage, and the taxi driver says, "Why can't you sell garbage? Everyone is selling garbage here." There's one point where the cab driver falls asleep, and he reaches out to shake him awake, and the glasses fall off of the cab driver. And the man sees his eyes, and how they're not human-like, and how they have like the fire of the gods inside his eyes. And how this man is not just a man, but a genie. And there's this whole thing about how genies don't grant wishes. The man invites him over to his hotel, and they have wonderful, touching gay sex. I mean, usually when I hear about gay sex, it's just kind of like either very well blown out, or it's just like they have gay sex at the end. And this was really, like, beautifully written. It's a beautifully written scene. But the man wakes up to find all of his stuff is missing. So the genie stole everything and left him with the identity that the genie once had. So now the man is a cab driver? Or the man is a genie? I'm not exactly sure exactly what happened at the end of that story. But that's the end of our section for today. My question to you is, what TV show would you be watching and hope that one of the characters would turn, look at you, and start talking directly to you by name? The question that I had last video was, what place is magical to you, is filled with magic and joy and wonder? For me, I'm in Seattle right now, and there's a theater here called the Egyptian that I really love, because it's like the old style theater. It's even got like Egyptian totems and very wonderful art around the screen. And every time I go there during the film festival, it's always a great time, whether or not the movie sucks or not, because I love that theater so much. Do not forget that the next book that I'll be reading is The Indisputable Proof of Santa Claus by Dr. Hannah Fry. I don't have it with me, otherwise I would hold it up for you. Go out and grab it by any legal means necessary. Buy it on a Kindle, buy it at a bookstore, borrow from a friend, borrow from a library. I don't care what you do as long as it's legal and you read it before I ruin it for you. I've been Elliot the Purple Hair Doofus, reminding you to watch your Regeneratus. And I will see you all in the next chapters of American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Toodles!